Joining me right now is Emily, Rosemary, and Jordan Fraser. And simply put, you are a mixed race family. And one of the reasons that we wanted to invite you here today is you're one of the families featured in this month's issue of Toronto Life, The End of White Toronto, how a new generation of mixed race kids will transform the city. And when I saw this, I thought this would make for such a good conversation. And what better way to start it than from a first-hand experience? So let me ask you this. Do you feel that you get the best of many worlds? Is that how it feels?
Yes, because you get to participate in both cultures and many traditions.
I should say that you're Irish English, you are Trinidadian, Chinese, Spanish, Indian.
Yes.
So what are some of the positive aspects of that? And let's talk about some of the challenges as well.
So I think the positive aspects, like you mentioned, are that you get the best of both worlds. So you get to experience all the different cultures. So there's sort of like a blending and a plurality, and I think it helps you understand diversity better. So yeah.
Do you ever get asked, "Oh, what's your background?" And do you know how to explain
really.
that? No.
I did a lot more.
You do a lot more.
But I think it's because of my generation, there were a lot less mixed race people around, so I think there were a lot more challenges. So when we talk about it, it's very different. But like I think that a lot of the challenges I experienced were, like being called half-breed or things like that, or some of the exoticization or alienation that can happen in being different, right? Sometimes. So yeah.
Now, did you ever worry about that when you were starting a family, the two of you?
About
what kind of
mixed-race
challenges your children might face?
Because I grew up white, basically, and it wasn't a big thought at the time. But when I knew I was in love with Rose and we were going to have a family, I knew that my child would be a mixed-race child, and I thought not one way or the other that it's going to change in terms of opportunities for her or anything like that, but I was looking forward to it, and I don't know, I'm just a proud dad of an almost 10-year-old girl. So.
And I should read a quote from the article because it's a very cool cover page, but it makes it seem like it's one race taking over another, and that's really not what the article talks about. Here's a quote: "Living in an era of mixed race doesn't mean the obliteration of race, it means the creation of whole new complex categories, and this is happening nowhere more than in Toronto."
Absolutely. And I think it's a different type of mixing. Like I think miscegenation or mixing of races has happened for years in many countries. Like if you look at South America, for instance, it's the blending of many races. So I think that it's very new for Toronto, but I think that the actual the mentality around it or the exposure to it is also helping people to embrace diversity a lot more. So I actually think it's a positive thing. Yeah.
Now with Emily, and I know that Emily, you are only 10, but did you have to talk about race very early on in your household?
No, I didn't really talk about it till I was about like 7 or 8, but I understand it now. And
does it make you more interested in other cultures because there's so many traditions in your house? What are some of your favorite traditions in your family?
I like to go to the St. Patrick's Day Parade and Carabana, and being 4th generation Canadian, we go to the Canada Day Parade.
All the different parades.
Absolutely. And what is your take on this, Jordan, in terms of living in a city where 20 years from now it will be such a mixture that it will almost feel like race is invisible?
Well, I'm a proud Torontonian. I grew up with all different types of people: West Indians, Europeans, 1st, 2nd, 3rd generation Canadians. I'm happy to be in this city. I think it's the plus. It can only make Toronto a more dynamic place, and just a happy, proud Torontonian. I'm just so excited to be on the show this morning with my daughter.
No, we love that this is a first-hand experience. Now, your experience is really interesting because you're seeing that with your daughter, there isn't much of an issue at school, but when you were growing up, as you said, it was very
And
different.
in fact, like my master's thesis was on mixed race identity in a Canadian context, and when the subjects that I interviewed then, the themes that they pulled out were so different when I talked to my daughter or lots of kids her age that are mixed race. It's just a little more common now. So, but yeah, like being called names like half-breed and stuff like that were kind of negative, or just even what are you all the time.
And there was a lot of studies that came out showing that somebody who was born in a mixed race family at the time, maybe even like in the 1980s, you're more likely to be confused about your identity.
Yes.
Did you experience that?
So I think there was a little bit of that, but I think as time evolved that things have gotten better, because when you look at media now in terms of the faces that we see too, that they are also mixed and different, and we see dark-haired women on TV now. When I was growing up, you didn't see a lot of that. When I went to school, I grew up in East York in a very, you know, in an area that was kind of very ethno-specific, and so, and I didn't look like anyone in that neighborhood, so I constantly was asked, what are you? What's your background? You know, like, are you this? Are you that? And I'd be like, oh my God, I don't know.
Yeah. And last question to you, Jordan. When you were first beginning to mix this, did you find it a challenge to integrate into another culture?
Not really. Like I said, I grew up with West Indians, Filipinos, Italians, Greeks, you name it. I'm pretty much.
He was more ethnic than you.
I played a lot of sports growing up, and that's how I related with a lot of different friends and so on. But no, I've felt integrated myself since I was 6 or 7 years old, pretty much.
Absolutely.
Into all different cultures.
And it's certainly something to be proud of, I think, living in Toronto. This is what Toronto's going to look like. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Emily, Rosemary, and Jordan Fraser.
Thanks for having us.
All right, we're going to